The world's stability is maintained by 4 orbs. These orbs contain the 4 elements that give all life to the planet: earth, fire, wind, and water. Or they did, until 4 monsters known as the Fiends of Chaos robbed the orbs of their light. Now the world is on the brink of destruction. Everything is shrouded in darkness. The wind has stopped blowing, the seas are raging, and the land is now rotting. All hope seems lost. But people speak of Lucan's prophecy, the prophecy that tells of 4 warriors of light, heroes destined to restore the orbs to their rightful glory and expel the evil once and for all. And that's the setup to the very first Final Fantasy, the template for what would become an iconic, groundbreaking RPG for the NES. Final Fantasy was originally released on the Famicom back in 1987, but eventually made its way to North America in 1990. Developed by Square, the title of this game actually has a hidden meaning to it. See, Square wasn't doing too hot. Their games weren't selling well at all, and they just couldn't maintain a business this way. So, in making this RPG, they called it Final Fantasy just in case this happened to be the death cry of the company. This was meant to be their last hurrah. And well, as I'm sure you're aware, they took a gamble and it paid off big time. Final Fantasy became a mega hit and is now the flagship franchise of the company we now know as Square Enix. So we're all pretty lucky that worked out, huh? Now I'm playing the OG Final Fantasy, the original Final Fantasy on Nintendo. This game has been remade and re-released on various platforms, but I wanted to look at the roots of it all. I wanted to check out the NES version just to see how far the series has come, and to experience what kids growing up in the early 90s had to play before the age of the internet with social media and online walkthroughs and the like. I've beaten the original Final Fantasy before, but I hadn't memorized every single aspect of the game, and I made sure that I didn't rely on a strategy guide when I went through this playthrough. It wasn't one of my childhood games growing up. My first Final Fantasy was number 4, and I would go on to play 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 before I would finally make it to the original. Hell, most of my memories from the first Final Fantasy growing up were seeing all of the sprites in the game being used in Newgrounds Flash animations, which I tended to watch a lot of during high school in the 2000 period.
The pungent stench of mildew emanates from the wet dungeon walls.
Where are the Cheetos?
They're right next to you.
I cast a spell. Where's the Mountain Dew?
In the fridge, duh!
I want to cast a spell.
Can I have a Mountain Dew? Yes, you can have a Mountain Dew, just go get it.
Man, I got an ogre slaying knife. It's got a +9 against ogres.
You're not there, you're getting drunk.
Okay, but if there's any girls there, I want to do them.
So right off the bat, the Warriors of Light are whatever you want them to be. The game offers up 6 different classes that you can choose from, all of which with their own quirks, advantages, and disadvantages. There's the Fighter class, who's basically a walking tank. The dude can practically equip any piece of armor or weaponry, and of everyone, he has the highest defense with some pretty great offense. He can only attack one target at a time, but having him in the front lines can really help protect your group. The Thief class has high agility and luck, allowing you to run away from battles more easily and tends to score more critical hits than others. Be warned though that the NES version of the game can be quite buggy, and sometimes the Thief doesn't really get to take advantage of his battle-fleeing skills as much as he'd like to. He also can't equip everything, and he's not quite as strong as the Fighter. The Black Belt is a class that actually benefits the less you equip to his character. He excels at unarmed combat and only gets hindered by extra armor and weaponry that would slow him down. By the end of the game, he also has the highest offense, able to take down the final boss rather quickly. It's a slow burn before he reaches his potential, but you will be saving tons of cash by having someone you don't need weapons and armor for. The Black Mage is your spellcaster, and when you find yourself surrounded by over 9 different enemies in one particular battle, sometimes it's nice to have some crowd control. With one activation of Lightning 2, the Black Mage can do what the melee fighters can't and clear an entire field of foes in one fell swoop. His offense and defense isn't too hot, but his ability to exploit weaknesses and hit multiple enemies at a time can't be ignored. The White Mage is your support. You'll save yourself a lot of cash bringing one along, as they can heal party members' damages with the Cure spell, and eventually gain abilities to warp out of dungeons, buff your characters for harder fights, as well as bring people back from the dead. They make any playthrough less stressful, and you'd be wise to bring one along. And finally, we have the Red Mage, a jack of all trades but a master of none. He can use black and white magic, and is proficient with weapons and armor that the fighters can use, but he's not the best in any category. He can't learn every magic spell, and he won't be getting the best ones, plus his offense and defense is adequate, but not necessarily on the level of the fighter or black belt. He's a great all-around class, though, and sometimes it's just nice to have an extra person who can cure poison or do crowd control attacks in battles. You're only allowed to choose 4 people of these 6 classes, and you can have duplicates if you really want. You can have a party of 4 fighters, 4 black mages, or 4 white mages. For this playthrough, I chose to use the fighter as a great offensive meat shield, and I brought all the mages to cure my status ailments, raise me from the dead, and do crowd control. This is the setup I've always went with, even if I do kinda wish I could bring the black belt along too. None of them come with pre-made names either, so I went with Clem, Sid, Vivi, and Rosa. Not the most original names I know. Final Fantasy IX features a black mage named Vivi. Final Fantasy IV features a white wizard named Rosa. My name is Clement, but the name limitations are at 4 letters, so Clem it is. And my red mage is Sid, because every Final Fantasy game in the series features a character named Sid, except for the first one. Oh, and get used to that. Final Fantasy I was the first game, but the only iconic things of the franchise in the first one are crystals, or in this case, orbs, an airship, you battle an Ochu at some points, and the black and white mages designs, which just scream Final Fantasy. Black mages being really colorful Jawas is just a Final Fantasy thing. This game doesn't have a lot of the things you think of. There's no Cid, there's no Moogles, there's no Cactuars, there's no Tonberries, there's not even a Chocobo. You don't get to ride yellow chickens in the first Final Fantasy. What blasphemy is this? No, the first game was a lot more inspired by your traditional Dungeons & Dragons experience. It seems to borrow from every fantasy trope imaginable to inhabit its world, and doesn't really have a unique identity. I mean, there's a village home to elves, a cave city that belongs to dwarves, you're gonna find yourself slaying lots of dragons, and even meeting up with talking dragons. This game also features vampires, mermaids, dinosaurs, and a floating spaceship castle inhabited by robots, including a war mech machine.
Metal Gear.
It really is just kind of everything, which makes sense when you consider that this was Square's last attempt to stay alive in the video game industry, I suppose. But yeah, it runs the gamut of what you think of as fantasy. Right off the bat, when the game starts up, you're thrust onto the world map in front of the city of Conaria. Not Corneria, Conaria. And really, it should be Cornelia, as every remake of this game refers to the city that way, but I digress. And the 4 warriors are just there. They don't have weapons or armor or anything. Just the 4 orbs and 400 gold to their names. And yes, I did say gold, not gil. It's right there, it says gold, see? Again, it's the first game of the series. So these 4 unarmed guys just decide out of the blue that they're gonna save the world. Where'd they even get the orbs in the first place? Being unarmed, you're expected to stop in town and buy equipment, and oh boy, this is where being the first game in the series starts to hurt it a little. Whenever you visit a shop, you can see the name of the weapon, what kind of weapon it is, and of course the price. And that's it. It doesn't tell you the strength of the weapon, it doesn't specify who can equip the weapon, nor does it show your player characters reacting as if they've found something better to use or anything. And like I said, I chose to replay Final Fantasy without a guide of any sorts. Sometimes you just had to buy everything and see what stuck, constantly switching between the status menu of a character and the equipment menus just to see if the thing you put on your fighter was better than the last thing you put on. This doesn't happen in future Final Fantasies, and wow, it gets tedious near the end when you start running out of inventory space. Characters in Final Fantasy can only carry 4 weapons and 4 sets of armors. That's it. Now with weapons, it isn't so bad. Characters can only equip 1, so that gives them 3 extra spaces to collect more so you can sell them at a shop later. But the armor is a different story. You have armor pieces for the body, head, arms, and shields, and they all go towards the inventory you're allowed to carry. So, a fighter class with armor, helmet, shield, and gauntlets on their person can't pick up anything at all. With my setup, my fighter and red mage couldn't collect anything, leaving my mages only 1 space each because they had armor, gloves, and a cap on for defense. And mages need defense most of all because they're so weak. So for most of the adventure, I was only allowed to pick up 2 new pieces of armor at a time, and if I ran into a third, that meant I'd have to drop one of the 2 pieces I was holding, and sometimes that third piece you pick up tends to be way weaker than one of the 2 you just dropped, making it feel pretty pointless. It feels kinda silly to me that our characters have such a weird inventory system. I can carry 99 heal potions, 99 softs, 99 tents, 99 cabins and houses, but only 4 armor pieces. Oh, and buying 99 of anything takes a while because you can't just buy them in bulk. You have to buy them one at a time. No doubt pissing off the clerk who has to keep opening his cash register every time we immediately tell him we want another one. Yeah, can I get another heal potion? Yeah, sorry, can I get another heal potion? Yeah, sorry to bother, can I get another heal— Holy fuck, asshole, just buy more than one! Good God, what are you doing? There are also specific shops that sell white and black magic. Mages don't just develop spells naturally, you have to purchase them in these shops. There are generally always 4 spells that belong to different levels of magic, and you're only allowed to carry 3 of a certain level. The choices are much trickier when you're a red mage, but with a black and white mage, you're just deciding what one spell you won't be using during the adventure. But after visiting shops, you're good to go, and get into the action. Final Fantasy's an RPG, obviously. There's no real-time combat. It's all turn-based strategy battles. You'll find yourself walking among the land when suddenly— boom! You're attacked by a horde of monsters. You choose what your 4 characters will attack and what they'll attack with, and then you just let it play out. The higher the agility, the more likely you're going to attack first, and if you can't kill all the enemies in the first turn, they're gonna get their shot at attacking you. Standard stuff by today, but for 1990, this was pretty fresh, cutting-edge gameplay. In fact, Final Fantasy holds up really well. Anytime I replay the first game, I'm usually playing the remakes. I'm usually playing the game on the PlayStation, or maybe the GBA version. Games that definitely streamline and fix a lot of the problems that the NES original had. One of which being the auto-targeting. See, in every other Final Fantasy, if you direct your team to attack one enemy, chances are they're going to die before each of the 4 people get a chance to attack them. So, the people who were originally going to attack that one ogre may now find themselves doing the same attack, but this time to the goblin in the background instead. You know, so that your move isn't wasted. But that's not how it works in the original Final Fantasy. If you have all 4 characters attack one enemy, and then it dies on the first hit, the other 3 party members will swing at air and attack nothing. Yeah, they just waste the attack and swing where the dead enemy used to be. Now that, combined with the shop and inventory systems, would lead me to think that the NES version would be a total pain to play. I mean, I got the impression this was probably going to be Nintendo hard, and I'd have to use a guide, and the game's difficulty would be too much, and I'd regret deciding to play this version halfway through, you know? But honestly, the opposite of that turned out to be the case. I was never frustrated by the lack of auto-targeting, and honestly, it just made me think and pay attention to the battles more. I had to plan 2 steps ahead, considering that because my fighter was so strong, maybe I should have him going after this one guy while everyone else gangs up on the guy with the bigger health bar. It didn't really feel like a flaw to me, it just felt like a unique twist on the battles. Did I need a guide to play through Final Fantasy? Absolutely not. One thing I really like to applaud about Final Fantasy's design is that they know how to design maps and limit areas to the player really well, and that all of the villagers and random townsfolk that you talk to in towns are incredibly helpful. So you go around towns and you meet all these people walking around. Sometimes they have nothing interesting to say. I'm a farmer! Right on, buddy! Oh, this guy's sleeping. Yes. Yes, it is nice to have legs. But for people who don't have a guide, they do point you in the right directions all the time. For example, I make it to the elf village and discover that their prince has been cursed by a dark elf named Astos. Only an herb can cure him. I find one NPC who tells me that the witch Matoya has this herb, but Matoya can't help me until I find her crystal, which allows her to see. Turns out, Astos the Dark Elf took the crystal from Matoya. So I investigate some dungeons, deliver a crown to a king who asked for it. Turns out, he's Astos. We fight, I win, he drops the crystal. So I retrieve the herb from Matoya and cure the prince. In return, he gives me the mystic key, which has the power to unlock any door. Hey, I found locked doors before. And one dwarf mentioned he needed TNT, And another dwarf mentioned TNT being in Conaria. It goes on like this. Simply talking to NPCs helps with every situation. When I need to find Oxyale, there's a person who tells me about how fairies can get it, and another person telling me where the fairy went. Or I just found a slab with a different language on it. Hey, Dr. Un knows about that, and I met a Dr. Un previously. How about that? It's all great. It's refreshing to play an NES RPG that isn't cryptic and confusing and actually tells you pertinent information. The NPCs all serve a purpose in fleshing out the world and helping your journey. I'm surprised, but it holds up. As for the difficulty of the game, well, let me show you my encounter with Lich, the fiend of the earth who is guarding the Earth Altar. He's a boss. He's the one obstacle in your way from restoring one of the Four Orbs of Light. And well... yeah, I beat him in one turn. I wasn't over-leveled. They sell Fire 3 in the town leading up to this dungeon. That was supposed to be one of the fearsome four fiends? Nice try, buddy! NES Final Fantasy is not a super challenging game. It has very obvious exploits where, ooh, I'm in a water temple filled with water enemies who are all weak to electricity. I wonder what my mage should spam. Enemies don't have tons of health, and honestly, I found it a waste of turns and time to even try buffing my allies for fighting anything that wasn't the final boss of the game. There's no fight that gives me pause. What makes the game challenging, though, especially in the early stages, is the fact that going through dungeons is an endurance test. Yeah, you can win every fight, but there's no save points in dungeons. Multiple floors, dozens of battles. Your health starts to whittle down after a while, and the mages start to run out of magic. There's no magic restoring items in the original Final Fantasy. No ethers, and your magic doesn't come in the form of MP. It comes in spell charges. So you might only have 4 or 5 opportunities to cure poison, or use your Cure 2 spell, or take out crowds of enemies with Ice 2. And the only way to refill spell charges is to either sleep at an inn in a town or buy a house which costs over 3,000 gold. So you start to run out of magic really, really quickly. Lich is a pushover, but it's the journey to Lich that feels stressful. One thing I haven't mentioned as well is that the game also doesn't feature Phoenix Downs. When your character gets killed in battle, only one thing can bring them back immediately, and that's a white mage. When you get the Life 1 spell, anyway. Making the class pretty essential to have in a party. And if your white mage died or you don't have one, well, you're down a party member, and the only way to bring them back is to return to a previous town and bring them to a cleric for resurrection. That's it. Downed party members also don't get experience, and it makes them weaker for every fight they're not participating in. But imagine getting 3/4 into a dungeon, you're already deep into it, right? And then you lose your white mage. You'll find yourself panicking because you can't just walk back out instantly. You went 4 floors deep. You have to keep going, buddy. And it's always the worst when you run into enemies who can spam hard-hitting magic on all of the party members or status ailments that can shut you down really quickly. You get turned to stone, hope you brought a cure, hope the white mage knows that soft spell. Some dungeons also have hazards, like the volcano Mount Gulg. So you enter and immediately come across a giant pool of lava, and it starts burning you the second you walk into it. And you're thinking to yourself, oh, there must be some protection I'm not using. Maybe I have to visit the Dwarven Blacksmith so you can make some fireproof boots or something. Nope. The design of this game expects you to wade in through all of the lava and intentionally take damage. Luckily, you only take 1 to 2 HP of damage for every step you take, which makes it not nearly as scary as it sounds, but still, that does add up after a while, and it's kind of ridiculous. I could just imagine the 4 Warriors of Light seeing that lava and deciding to go for it anyway, and it makes me laugh every single time. Alright, come my friends, we must return the Fire Orb to its rightful glory and save the— oh, Jesus Christ! Oh God! Oh God! Oh, Jesus, that's hot! That's hot! Jesus Christ, that's hot! Holy shit, my feet! Oh my God! The biggest stress I had was going through the ice cave, where there are 2 enemies here who can use one-hit kill spells to immediately drop your party members. You can have 600 HP on your person, and then the sorcerer just decides, nah, fuck that noise, and murders you instantly. Jesus! And the mages, oh god, they can spam the death spell on all 4 of you. It's got bad accuracy, but I don't know, the mage sure has a lot of luck to me. I always ran away from the mages. They were an annoying fight. So yeah, I wouldn't describe FF1 as easy per se, but there's no tough boss in the game. Again, it's the journey to them that's stressful, not so much the final encounters. Adequate difficulty that doesn't hold your hand, but doesn't belong to the reputation of being Nintendo hard. It's playable, and it holds up well. I mean, I still get the same satisfaction from this almost 30-year-old video game that I do from other RPGs. Hell, some more than others. It's a basic setup. Fight monsters, gain experience. Gain enough experience, you level up. Then you get stronger and better and the fights get a little easier, and you can take on the bigger monsters and yada yada yada. I still love the sense of progression. You start off fighting tiny imps and wolves and your accuracy is pretty terrible. You're gonna miss attacks a lot as the game starts up. But then you're buying better armor and weapons with all the gold you're getting, and now you're finding better spells for your mages, and your method of transportation is improving too! I mean, you're hoofing it along the world map the entire time, but then you stop pirates from terrorizing a town, and all of a sudden you got yourself a pirate ship to sail the ocean. And then you meet Lucan and the 12 Sages, and they give you a canoe to sail through smaller rivers. Yeah, the 4 warriors can carry a canoe on their person. What of it? But the ultimate prize is found in the ice cave. You find a stone, known as the Floater, which can summon a special craft made by the technologically advanced how do you say that? You find a special craft made by the technologically advanced Leffy people, the airship. And getting this vehicle is so satisfying no matter the Final Fantasy. What may have taken you 3 minutes to go across a continent now happens in the span of 10 seconds with your flying aircraft. As a kid, you get so damn excited to zip around the world map really quickly and not have to worry about random encounters getting in the way. I will always love the airship, and I'm glad that the very first game in the series introduced this concept. Well, maybe Final Fantasy didn't introduce the concept. Maybe Dragon Quest had airships first. I never played Dragon Quest. Oh, but speaking of which, the game's even got its fair share of fun secrets. The village of Elfland actually has a reference to Dragon Quest with one particular gravestone. One you can examine that says, "Here lies Erdrick." Erdrick is this guy. Apparently, Final Fantasy creator and designer Hironobu Sakagachi was inspired by Dragon Quest, along with Ultima and The Legend of Zelda, which helped spark the creation of Final Fantasy. So that's both a nice nod and pretty interesting in hindsight. Squaresoft would go on to merge with Enix, Dragon Quest publisher, and form the company Square Enix. So Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest are part of the same company now. In the Japanese version of the game, that grave belonged to someone else entirely, and this got updated with every remake of Final Fantasy I. Because in those versions, the grave belongs to Link. Like The Legend of Zelda's Link. Oh hey, I guess this is part of the hero is defeated timeline. Also kids, this is why you don't attack the cuckoos. The game also features a hidden puzzle as soon as you get access to the pirate ship. Hold the A button and push the B button 30 times when you're on the ship, and you get to play a little minigame. Oh, I hate these puzzles! I can never get all the blocks where I want them to be. Why do video games keep using this thing? But I digress. The soundtrack of this game is fantastic, and I'm gonna be saying this about pretty much the entire Final Fantasy franchise. We all have composer Nobuo Uematsu to thank for this, and with each game he would only get better and better and better, and the man is a video game composing legend as far as I'm concerned. He creates some really memorable tracks that will never leave your head and absolutely fit every single situation. And 3 of the tracks in this game will be staying with the majority of the series. The Prelude, the Victory theme that never stops being satisfying, and the main theme of all Final Fantasy, which usually shows up in the ending credits of every game in the series. The music's great! Final Fantasy is a great game that holds up way better than I remember. But if you're looking for a deep storyline with tons of compelling characters, the first game is definitely the weakest. There's not much plot. You're 4 unnamed heroes with no backstories whose entire motivation is to restore the Four Orbs of Light to their former glory. Occasionally there are side plots like the Dark Elf Astos poisoning the Elven Prince, as well as an evil knight known as Garland kidnapping Conaria's princess, but there's not much more to it than that. Characters only have a text box worth of information to say, and the story never really amounts to more than, you're the hero, do a good thing, make things less shitty. The end. There's no side quests in Final Fantasy, unless you count your interaction with Bahamut the Dragon King. There are optional islands that are home to talking dragons that you don't need to visit, but if you do, Bahamut tells you that he can grant you incredible power if you bring him proof of courage. Consulting with townsfolk, you discover that people who go through the Castle of Trials can find proof there. So you go through a teleporter castle and face enemies who aren't any harder than anything you've been finding in the other dungeons, eventually making it to a chest containing a rat's tail. I repeat, a rat's tail. Now really, having a rat's tail proves that you are courageous. Is Bahamut the king of dragons or the king of elephants? Either way, giving Bahamut the rat's tail is actually awesome because it totally upgrades all of your classes. The fighter becomes a knight, the black belt a monk, the thief a ninja, and all of the mages become wizards. This allows them to equip better weapons and armor, as well as utilize some of the best spells in the game. So it's optional, but you're gonna end up doing it. Why wouldn't you? I like how the sprites of all the characters get jacked up and everyone's all muscular now. Hell, the black mage stops being a Jawa and starts looking like a human being all of a sudden too. Strange. After you defeat the 4 Fiends of Chaos, Lich, Carrie, Kraken, and Tiamat, Lucan and the 12 Sages warn you that even though you've restored the 4 orbs to their rightful glory, there's a weird time loop going on and that someone from 2,000 years in the past is actually keeping the 4 Fiends alive and constantly sending them to the present to continue their evil reign. So for your final dungeon, you return to the Chaos Shrine where you defeated Garland in the first hour of the game, but this time, 2,000 years in the past. And yes, you do have to refight the 4 Fiends, but hey, I kicked Lich's ass before, and I'm sure I can do it again. Jesus Christ! What the hell? When did you learn the nuke spell? And this, by the way, was one of the only 2 game overs I ever got during the playthrough. One was from mages in the ice cave when I wasn't recording footage, and the second was from big ol' Lich here. When I lost both my mages, I couldn't warp out of the dungeon or bring them back from the dead. I needed a cleric, so I was pretty much fucked. Curse you, Lich. I will never forget how much of a bastard you were. Anywho, after going through the temple, you eventually discover that the man resurrecting the 4 Fiends is none other than... Garland? I whooped your ass ages ago! You were a pushover! How are you even alive? It turns out the 4 Fiends sent him back in time to send their past selves into the future so that they would once again send Garland back in time, and the cycle repeats infinitely, keeping the 4 Fiends alive forever, and Garland here just keeps getting stronger and stronger. I'm a little confused as to how this whole thing works, honestly. But still, Garland actually transforms into a beast known as Chaos, and is the hardest encounter of the game. Not terribly difficult, I wasn't struggling to survive or anything, but he's still definitely the hardest foe of the game. And yes, I have fought the war mech in the floating castle. With Garland's final defeat, the time loop is closed, the four fiends never get to stay alive and terrorize the present, changing the timeline and making it so that they never corrupted the four orbs. The earth is no longer rotting, the wind is blowing again, and the four warriors of light are nobodies who never saved anyone. Yeah, ain't that our luck? We never needed to go on a quest to save the world or anything, so everything we just did in the game has been erased from history. Princess Sarah doesn't even have the hots for me anymore. What good is the reward without any of the fame and glory? But a noble hero asks not for glory. What matters is that the world is safe, the darkness vanquished, and we can live out our final fantasies. So yeah, good game is good. I can easily see why this game became a mega hit back in 1987, and why so many people have fond memories of this game. It's the kind of RPG that after you beat it, you almost want to start over and try it with a completely different party setup, just to see how different the playthrough will be. It's certainly dated, with a bad inventory system, only one save file, and numerous statistical glitches and bugs that actually don't work the way they're supposed to. At least that's what people tell me. They must not have been game-breaking bugs though, because I didn't even notice when things weren't working as intended. My magic spells still worked when I used them, and my mages still kicked ass during the entire playthrough. So whatever problems there are, they aren't noticeable. But if the NES version isn't your cup of tea, I would recommend getting either the PS1, GBA, or PSP remakes. Not only do they fix the inventory stuff, they also give you the ability to auto-target enemies, show the stats of weapons before you buy them, and they add some extra cutscenes and dialogue to help spice up the barely existent story in the game. Hell, the GBA and PSP versions actually add Phoenix Downs and Ethers to really streamline the adventure, as well as new dungeons with harder enemies for the gamers who are looking for a challenge. I think anyone who wants to get into Final Fantasy should at least try out the first game at some point. You don't need to make it your first, but it's a fascinating play to see how the series began. It's a video game Dungeons & Dragons that works fine and delivers satisfying gameplay. What more could you ask for? But yeah, anywho guys, I got another Final Fantasy to play, so come back at the end of January when I reminisce about Final Fantasy II.